Okay. Welcome to the Philosopher and the Monk podcast.
Yes, on this podcast, we discuss consciousness, awakening, meditation. Today, we have a special guest with us, James' personal friend.
Hi, this is Tom Thompson. How are you, Tom?
Hey, it's good to see you guys.
And I met Tom.
James and RJ.
Good to see you. Thanks for taking the time out.
Sure. My pleasure.
I met Tom. I got an email maybe 4 years ago or something about he had read The Skeptic's Apprentice, and then you wrote me after you read the Gospel of Astonishment, and we just hit it off right away.
Right.
And now we're battling some skeptics in a secret email thread. So
Really, you have a secret email thing going on?
with you, and
yeah.
you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I do know. Okay.
I thought it was a secret.
It is a secret.
It's an open secret.
It's an open secret.
Is that a reference to Tony Parsons?
Yeah, I like Tony.
I do too.
Me too.
Actually, you know what? Maybe we could start out with this question. I really like Tony Parsons. I think he is like almost equivalent to how a Zen master would speak to his students at the monastery, which is very effective if you're close to popping or whatever words you want to use for that. But I would say he's not effective for a beginner. Would you guys care to comment on that?
Tom?
Yeah, I don't know. That's an interesting thing. I think most people are very stuck in a way of viewing themselves and the world that they're not having any idea what Tony's saying. So I think a lot of people freak out and leave and go find somebody else who fits more easily into their worldview. But I think Tony, in Shaivism, it's anupaya. There's nothing to do. Easy, simple. This is it. This is, as he says, emptiness expressing is everything. And I think, you have to be ready to hear that.
Yes.
Yeah. And he's turned out a bunch of teachers, I think, like Richard Sylvester and Lisa Carnes. A lot of people went through Tony first.
Yeah. And so, like RJ said, they popped.
Yeah.
They were right. But if you're not right, you're holding on to your spiritual teachings as an identity, and you get very threatened by Tony. And he's relentless. He won't, he doesn't give you any slack.
What do they call him? I think he says in Denmark, Tony the Terminator. He's great.
I first heard a tape of his, I think it was like around 2000, and he was in California. And this woman was trying to make him given a concession. Like, if you had this huge piece of brownie, wouldn't you want to share it with everybody in the world? Tony goes, no. And I just loved him. The first time I heard him, I just had to find out who he was, and I was rolling on the ground laughing. So some teachers give concessions. I probably do more than I should, but he doesn't.
Right.
This is a.
And Tom, you said, I think you've been at this for about 50 plus years, right?
Yeah.
Wow.
And I think RJ had a question. What was you had a question about how Tom started?
Oh, well, yeah, I had a question. We started neti technique, and then I incorporated breathing into that. I did look many times at transcendental meditation. Is there now two part? Could you give a brief overview of TM, and why did you choose TM, or did it choose you maybe? But why?
I never did TM. I know a lot about it.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I think it's in its basic form, which is you get a mantra and you're taught how to use it. I think it's excellent. I think it's an enjoyable practice. It's an effective practice. And it's it's easier than most Buddhist techniques. It's more enjoyable. And so I think I've never learned TM, but I've prescribed it for many people. And I've known many people who do it. I think it's a really excellent overall technique, and they've got it, package deal, and it's easy to access. But I've never done it.
Okay, I sorry about that. I thought you did.
No, that's all right. No,
Yeah.
you probably heard me pushing it somewhere, but I've never done
And
Yeah, it
Rick Arch,
definitely-
Rick Arch has been teaching that for a long time.
Yeah, Rick's really into it.
Okay.
Was really into it. He's moved on, but he's not.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, after you master your breathing, or you master the word, the way you do transcendental meditation, after years and years, and you've been doing this for 50 years, those are just beginning techniques to try and calm your mind down. So after you master it, I know, without even asking you this question, that you now can go right into the space. And what I mean by space is the divine space, right?
Well, this is the divine space right now.
Well, I mean, subtract the veil that's covering
Even
it.
the veil.
And the veil is
It-
the ultimate reality as well.
Yeah, so it veils itself, but even the veil, even so-called Maya Shakti, is it. That's it hiding.
There's no two.
Right.
There's no two, right?
So in the final realization, there's nothing to do. There's
Right.
nothing to believe, nothing. That doesn't mean you can't. Like I still enjoy eating dinner and stuff, and I still enjoy meditating, but the idea that there's something to achieve when all there is this disappears.
The way I incorporate that is I'm 100% with that. There's nothing else except universal consciousness to me. That's it.
Right.
And universal consciousness is
Is every-
manifesting itself, and then we see a solid world, but that's just what universal consciousness looks like to our perspective as a manifested human being of universal consciousness itself.
Right. So that's that. I was using this thing earlier today in satsang about hypnosis. I work a lot with hypnosis, and sometimes I give trainings, and there's this thing where I take a subject in front of the group and I have them put their hands together like this, and I have them lock, and I say, the harder you try to release your hands, the harder it'll be. And so the subject will sit there and try to release their hands, and then I'll say, in a moment, I'm going to come over and tap your hands, and they'll relax and open. And so I tap them and they go. Now, were their hands really locked together? No,
Not really.
but they believe they were. That's the hypnosis. And so here's a guy who's an engineer struggling to pull his hands apart, and everybody's laughing because we all know on some level he's creating the problem.
Yeah.
There is no problem. And I go over and tap his hands and boom, they relax. So relaxation's the key. But we're all hypnotized. Universal consciousness hypnotizes itself in duality so it can experience itself.
Yeah. I think I wrote in my little story, I wrote that something like it's like wholeness.
There it is.
There it is. Thanks, Tom. Like wholeness manifests a dual world out of itself.
Yes.
There's nothing but wholeness. There's nothing but unity. Right, Jim?
Right.
James,
So
you wrote.
what would it be doing if there wasn't a dualistic world of subject object? It would be sitting around for timeless time being bored to death.
Yeah.
And that would be the reason why is there a universe, right?
Yeah. So it can experience itself in its infinite possibilities.
But it can only experience itself in duality.
Right. Subject object.
Right. So it's got to create a dual world out of itself, not separate from itself.
Right. It is. It's just like, we can sit in our imaginations and dream up a beautiful girl and, get all caught in that. And then in a second, open our eyes and it's gone. But when we're absorbed in that, it can be very real.
Right. Right.
Just like a dream.
Yeah, or earlier I saw a friend of mine who always wanted to be a rock musician, and I know he shared some of his fantasies, but he's making it up. But to
Right.
him, when he's in the midst of being a rock star, they're very real, very authentic at that moment.
So our journeys, we were, as you know, hardcore, card-carrying, radical, orthodox, atheist materialists. And we
Skeptic,
were,
right?
yeah, skeptics. We were Randy guys. We were with Randy,
Both
and
of you were with Randy?
I was with Randy, but he was my friend, so he was right there with him.
Okay, good. So you
Randy
both.
would tap us with his cane, and and
Yeah, I loved Amazing Randy. He was great.
yeah, and he was such a wonderful human being.
Mm.
But he couldn't see this at all, the non-dual.
So was he resisting it?
That's the
Was
question.
he like
Yeah, he
committed to his view and he wasn't willing to let it go, or he just couldn't see it?
definitely thought that consciousness arose from the brain and from matter. Not
Did he notice that idea arose within consciousness?
No, he didn't. And this is a guy that exposed everyone, all the phony faith healers, and apparently he could see through. I mean, I would be with him and he would put $100,000. It used to be 10,000, then 100,000, then 1 million on the line. And I'd say, what if someone comes up with a computer trick somehow that you don't know? And he said, nope. He called me Jimmy. Nope, they can't fool me. And he says, I stay up on it at MIT. He was up, his friends were Sagan and Asimov, and all the greats would come through the house, and Richard Dawkins. So we came through that path. How did you go through that at all? At 18 years old, 20, what was Tom?
Well, I was 15, I was very involved in science. And so science is obviously an objective, you're looking at the contents of consciousness. And I was fascinated by cancer, which is life gone wild, and I was doing research of plants and all that. I had a laboratory. My father figured I was killing everybody in our family, so he helped me build a lab out in the stable, so I'd stop doing that. And we were on a summer vacation looking for colleges for my brother, who was older than I was. And at my aunt's house in Lumberton, North Carolina, I came upon the first book of yoga. And the author talked about yoga as being a subjective science. And that the truth of our being isn't out there. That's a projection of it. It's in here. So that made total sense to me at that time. And so I shifted gears and started, we lived up near New York City. And so I was able to go into the city and find more books on yoga. And of course, there were the yoga for Hollywood actresses books. But there were also like Ramurti Mishra and some others. Dr. Ramurti Mishra is a psychiatrist, much deeper books. And so I was just fascinated. And then in 1971, I was able to go to Valmorin, Quebec for the summer and train with Swami Vishnu Devananda. And that was my first in-depth immersion into the yogic pathways. And his guru was Swami Shivananda, who was a medical doctor. So again, there was a acknowledgement of the Western medical scientific approach, which really worked for me. And then, like you said, the neti, that's a very rational scientific approach. Am I this? Am I that? It's all transitory. So that's what started. And then I found teachers and just kept going deeper.
That's great. Audrey, you had what was that second question you had? It's a great one.
Oh, and we know Shivananda. We had a friend that was his favorite guy, remember?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Could I give you another question, Tom?
Sure.
Okay. How is it to be awake as an awakening person and have a wife?
Well, my first answer is she's wife number 3.
Oh,
But I can't say that the awakeness is here. Bonnie and I get along great. We're very in tune, and she's extremely supportive. And she has her own skepticism and questioning, which is fine. And we're doing fine. But I think, so I'm very lucky. We've been married over 30 years.
Wow.
But like I say, she's wife number 3. I think what happens in awakening is the idea that something external to you is going to make you happy falls away. So you can still have relationships, but most relationships are contractual, husband and wife. You know, if you do this for me, then I'm going to do that. You know, if you have my children, then I'm going to make enough money to support us, or whatever it is. Or, you know, I stroke your ego, you stroke mine. But the need for that falls away in awakening. And so traditional relationships are difficult because the person who's awake doesn't need anything.
Are they difficult or impossible?
Well, it depends on the person. If the other person is very accepting, it's easy. But if they're still playing games and roles and stuff like that, it can be very difficult because it's like fighting smoke. There's nobody there
Right.
to get into the game. You start a game, you start it rolling, and then the other person just doesn't pick up the ball to play.
Yeah, like
And-
if you had detached yourself, or you stopped identifying yourself with your ego,
Yeah,
but your partner has not.
right. Then it's going to be interesting.
Yeah. Exactly.
So
Wasn't
that's
Sorry.
that's the issue, because the ego is a game plan. Assumptions of, so one of the first books I ran into that was very helpful was Games People Play by Eric Berne. It was like, oh my God, you figured it all out. But the ego is a game player, and it doesn't know what to do if somebody else isn't playing a game. So relationships, traditional, normal relationships, can be very difficult.
Oh yeah.
If
RJ, remember when I asked you, could you get married, and what you said?
I'm sure I said a lot of things.
You said something like she'd have to be a non-dual, maybe an Asian.
Asian.
And then I said, do you see her every day? And he said, no, once a week.
Well, no, I was giving you like Shunryu Suzuki,
oh yeah,
who I love. He was married, and I was talking to James about that, and he said, and I said, if you lived in you could be married, definitely. If you were in a monastery, and once a week he would see his wife. He'd be in the monastery and see that you could do, easy.
well, I'll tell you about an enlightened married couple. Sri, and so I had a guru named Sri Dhyan Yogi Madhusundars, and Guruji was a teacher of Kundalini Maha Yoga. He lived to be 116. Late in his life, he found a successor who was a young woman, I believe in Mumbai, Sri Anandima, I know quite well. So Sri Anandima, he was like almost 100 and she was like a teenager, and he groomed her to be his successor. Her problem wasn't going into Samadhi. Her problem was coming out of Samadhi. So she would just go, and her body would be the life force would all be at like the top of her head, and she'd be gone. And she'd also take on the form of other gods and goddesses. But anyway, she had a hard time coming out of Samadhi. So Guruji wanted her to be his successor. So he told Dilipshi, you have to learn to take care of her. But because you're traveling in the West, you need to be married, because otherwise people will freak out, because you'll be spending the nights together and you'll be doing all sorts of things together. So he had Dilipshi and Anandima get married, and he basically quite happily, quite willingly takes care of her. Now she can come out of Samadhi much better now. She's really taking on the mantle of being his successor. But basically, the Leipzig's job was helping her be the guru. And now, it's their team, their husband and wife, but they're not a normal married couple.
That's the only way I could see being married.
Tom, you said one of my favorite words, samadhi. Can you tell us what that is for anyone watching?
Well, my definition is the one I'm going to use is not like in the Yoga Sutras, and it's not in a lot of things. When I talk about a Kundalini Samadhi, where the Kundalini is supreme consciousness in an individuated form. And so normally we are a person or a thing inside a human body, and we're encapsulated by our programming and conditioning, and our awareness is limited by the reality tunnels we live in. But when we open and surrender, the Kundalini literally, instead of everything going into the brain becomes a receiver, and you become like, well, there can be huge downloads of insights, huge things coming in, but there's also this intelligent light that's just shining everywhere. It's outside of time and space. And absorption in that is just, it's incredible mystical experience, but it's not, it affects the nervous system and the brain and the hormones and all that, but these are receivers. This is non-local. And so to go into samadhi, traditionally, this type of samadhi, you have to have the body in good shape and the nervous system and everything, balanced and integrated, because it can be a lot of power flowing through. But there's no longer a you having an experience. There's just vast, infinite sea of awareness. And then it can condense down. So to answer RJ's thing, I'm in samadhi upstairs and Bonnie's downstairs watching the news. I have to come out to eat like I did today before I see clients. So I come down and I've been like seeing God or whatever, and she's been watching the news. Like, do you know what's happening? I'm around Donald Trump, and I'm back. So that's part of the fun of being married.
Al Pacino in Godfather 3, right? Just when I thought I was out, they pulled me back in.
Right, that's right. That's right. And so she's having a crisis of what's going on in the news, and I've like been gone. And I'm trying to figure out how to fix breakfast. It's like, this is a knife. Don't cut off your fingers,
And that's something we're working on now, is the integration into the everyday. Yeah. That's kind of new to us the last couple of years.
Well, in an ashram or a zendo, they really like Suzuki Roshi. You get up after meditation and you go sweep the floors, cook dinner. Right. So they in all good ashrams, you end up doing a lot of work, physical, basic, cleaning, cooking, repairing, painting, all that stuff. So they may allow these profound states of satori or samadhi, but they pull you back,
right,
full circle. Better.
Some people would say they go to a bar after, or something after, or anything to just balance it out a little bit now and then.
I think there have been a number of people like Chungya Trungpa, Alan Watts, others who used alcohol to numb out. A lot of my students are very sensitive, and they pick up their empaths. They pick up a lot of energy of what's ever going on. And so the easiest in our society, the easiest thing to do is numb out some way.
Jack Kerouac.
Yeah, Kerouac. Yeah. So these are all guys very aware, we used alcohol to numb the instrument.
Do you remember Trungpa's answer when they said, how do you do cocaine? And he's drinking vodka from the front of the room. And he said, I'm the only one who can do that. That was his answer. Just me.
Right. He probably was.
Yeah. He was something. And we had a connection with him too. My brother was a Ginsberg student at Brooklyn College.
Cool. Wow, that's
Ginsberg,
great.
and that was his teacher. So it was a great
You met Ginsberg, if I remember.
Yes.
Yeah.
Went to a Christmas party at his apartment in Brooklyn. And he still had the chain to pull the chain to use the light in the bathroom. And yeah, it was great.
James, what did you bring to the party that he wouldn't let you bring in?
A 64-ounce Schlitz malt liquor, a giant beer like this big.
He said no.
Why wouldn't he let you bring it in?
There was no alcohol allowed.
Oh,
I think because of what it did to Jack. He was very anti-alcohol. So
they saw Jack drink himself into the grave. Yeah.
Yeah, and he answered the door in a suit, and I said, "But you are Alan, LSD taking, finger symbol chanting, naked Ginsberg, and you're not letting me in." And he said, "Okay," and he let me in. And I had to protect it because all the students, it was all college students, and they wanted it. And then I showed him some magic and got into I was doing 161 card cuts a minute, one-handed cuts, like really fast. And he said, "That looks like your meditation." And he said, "What, do you meditate?" And I said, "No." And he said, "You will. One day you will."
That was like 20 years ago, right?
19, or 30 years ago. Yeah, maybe the 90s, mid-90s.
Yeah, he's been gone a little while.
Yeah.
I have to say, I've had some magicians show me some of how they do some of the tricks, but it's very impressive. I mean, the sliding, all of that stuff, it's just still mind-blowing to me. And how you magicians pull that off, that's like Maya Shakti, that's
Yeah. And RJ is a jazz drummer. So he's got
really?
Yeah. So between the drum, that was an easy, I think we always think about that with how do we switch to meditation, because we had the discipline to practice so hard, forget about 10,000 hours. It was so many hours of sleight of handed drumming that once we learned neti neti and these techniques, we were able to focus.
Yeah. Any discipline helps you move into another. RJ, I have a quick question for you. What do you think of Charlie Watts?
Charlie Watts, it's so funny you asked that. For a long time, I didn't like him because he was too simple. And I'm listening to, Dave Weckl and some jazz drummers.
Tony Williams.
Yeah. But then I started to gain an appreciation for him for his rock solid tempo, his unswerving, unwavering metronome-like tempo that he could keep. And he was extremely professional. What do you?
But he was a jazz drummer outside of the Stones. He had his own group, and he loved jazz, and he really almost didn't join the Stones because he didn't think they were good enough.
For the same reason I was saying. Yep, exactly. That's why you see, like the drummer from Journey, he started a jazz band. Phil Collins from, what was his big band? Phil Collins?
Genesis.
Yeah, he started his own jazz band. These guys who are great musicians, okay, they'll sell some records and make the hit songs, but you can only do that for so long, right? Because you have to go towards
that's great. That's great.
Yeah, I thought you were going to ask me, are you a Rolling Stones fan though, or would you?
I'm a Rolling Stones fan. I know nothing about music. I have a family that's very musical. That gene bypassed me, but I've always loved the Stones, and some other groups. They're usually the normal pop groups and stuff. I know very little about music, but I know what I can listen to. But even then, I can't listen to it long because music is a little hard for my nervous system. So I can listen to it for short. I couldn't go to a concert or something like that without being very numbed down.
Right.
It's too much. But yeah,
Yeah, I've been listening to a lot of just angelic chant lately. That's all I could really hear. Gregorian chant or Benedictine, something really light. I'm a Van Halen guy, but yeah, I can't do it anymore. So speaking of stones, when did you first take the astonishment medicine?
Well, that was in the 60s. I don't remember exactly because back then it was like highly not good to do that. And my parents, in their infinite wisdom, for some reason, thought prep school would be good for me. So I went for 3 years till I was asked to leave. It was on those 3 years, somewhere in there, I first heard about Tim Larry up in Harvard and LSD. I was already at 15 a lot interested in whatever enlightenment was. And what they were saying, Life magazine and stuff, is LSD is an enlightenment. And that got my attention. It's like, really? I can take a pill? And living near New York City, it didn't take me long. I had a friend who was going into the city, and we got some, what was the name of the laboratory? We got some pure LSD from the lab that made it in New Jersey.
And did you take it alone or with a sitter or with a bunch of friends? Or
we didn't know at that time about guide, setting, and guide, which I see you guys talk about, which is good. Definitely over the years, I've seen too many train wrecks because they didn't have setting and a guide. They like my brother, he thought it would be like a big drunk. And no, it's not going to be like that. So I really go with that. I really think people need a good setting, and definitely a guide the first few times.
Yes.
I can recommend not riding on the New York subways on it. There are a lot of things I can tell people not to do.
I've never left my bedroom. Never once.
That's a good idea. Yeah, I would often
maybe once to use the bathroom. Yeah.
On the subway. That's got to be crazy.
Yeah, we go into New York. We go in from Westchester to New York. We cop something down in the village, and we didn't think it was good to be around our parents, so we take it in the city, and then it would hit, and you're like, oh Jesus, I've got to get home somehow. I saw what was that first Dustin Hoffman movie? I came home one night, my parents go, guess what, we have a surprise, we're going to go see this movie. And it was just as it was coming on.
Is that The Graduate?
Yeah, we saw The Graduate with my parents tripping on acid.
No way.
Another time, my friends were picking me up to see 2001.
Oh, one of my favorites.
So I dropped before dinner. I'd eat dinner with my parents. I dropped, and I thought it'd be hitting strong by the time I get out of the house in the car going to the movie. So my friends come in. My mother says, you've been promising to hang these curtains, these lights, all week. You're not going anywhere till you hang these curtains. It seems like it's taken forever, but finally got out of there and went to see 2001, and we were in the very front seats.
Oh.
And it was just the most real movie I'd ever seen at that point. It was just fantastic.
Do you remember the ending?
Yeah.
Oh. The Infinity Hotel, the whole, it's so perfect.
Yeah, and the guy getting up from the chair and sort of turning around and looking behind him.
Yes. And then the monolith and the bed, and he touches the finger like like in And
it's a great movie.
At the end, the baby, he comes back as a baby to Earth, to, I don't know,
Whatever.
to whatever.
It was a great movie.
Yeah, so ahead of its time. Like his
Yeah.
effects still stand up. The whole thing stands up,
Yeah,
effect
yeah,
wise.
exactly. And it was a great movie to see on LSD.
Oh.
I mean, people say I don't understand the ending. Well, I can't explain it now, but we totally understood it that night. It was like obvious.
Right.
But we were on
Right.
pretty good LSD.
Yeah, Paul Harris and I were in the theater a night after being at RJ's and having the experience with MDMA. And we're in the theater the next day watching Christopher Nolan's not Inception, Interstellar.
Oh,
And there was this part that was so complicated. And I heard a guy way in the back say, speaking to the screen, and I just turned to Paul and I said, just an ordinary Friday night. That was Friday night right there. It was so clear. People would take
Inception,
notes.
another good one.
Yeah.
Tommy, would you mind if I ask you another question?
No, go right ahead.
Okay. How important is it to have a guru or a teacher?
Well, that depends on whether they're an authentic guru or teacher.
Very good. Yeah.
There's something called spiritual scotoma being a blind spot. And a lot of the teachers with YouTube videos and other stuff, they're not cooked. They've had mystical experiences. They've maybe had a satori. They've had obviously something happen, but they're still inside the circle. They're not outside it. And I don't think they're bad people. I don't think they're dishonest. They just don't understand. They haven't completed the process.
Right.
And what a good teacher does is they tell you to keep going, that you're half-baked. So a lot of Advaita people and Zen people end up in what's called the ghost cave, which is pure emptiness. And that's a half-baked state. And like you guys were saying earlier, you have to integrate and ground and be able to function in this plane. So there are a lot of people who get half-baked and they're disassociated. They're not fully, they're still inside the narcissistic bubble. They're not outside it. So anyway, a good teacher, a good guru knows where you are. And, Swami Muktananda thought he had all these incredible mystical experiences. And he came back to see his guru, Bhagwan Nityananda. And Nityananda started yelling at him, half-baked, get out of here.
Wow.
And years later, or quite a while later, I don't remember how long, suddenly Nityananda got up one day and started dancing and saying, Muktananda's become Shiva, Muktananda's become Shiva. But Baba, at that point, could care less. He was finished, so he had no compulsion to say I'm enlightened, to gather students, to do anything. It wasn't until Nityananda brought him back. So a lot of people need a guru. Just because you can read a good book and understand it and appreciate it doesn't mean you're cooked. And just because, and you can teach a good parrot to teach Advaita Vedanta, it's like, so I think maybe not everybody needs a guru or teacher, but I'm always suspicious when people proclaim that too loudly. I don't need a teacher or guru. You probably do that.
Yeah, I mean, I feel the same way because there could be certain things
you don't see it,
you're unaware of.
Yeah.
Right.
Paul would write. I would always check in with him, and he would say, "You're almost cooked." He would say the same words you're using right now. You guys are almost there. He could tell,
Yeah,
but we thought we were done. Thought we were totally attached to the emptiness. Totally.
Yeah, and going back to Tom's point,
it's a great place to be.
Yeah.
But you think that once you hit that first, let's call it a level of consciousness, you hit that first level, some people call it like soul consciousness, whatever the words don't matter. but you hit that first level, and some people think I've arrived.
Yeah.
Right.
And
Absolutely.
that's just the beginning.
Yeah.
Right.
You didn't get started. But you
Right.
came out of yourself a little bit in a way you never have before in your life. And it's so new that you trick yourself into thinking you're enlightened.
Yeah. It's so outside the box
Yeah.
that it's easy to think this must be it. What else could there be?
Yeah.
But that's really go
But then
take care of your grandmother in the nursing home. That's what else can be.
Then you hear Suzuki say, when you're enlightened, there's no one there to even know it. It's
Yes.
nothing special. It's nothing special.
Just
Right.
2 inches off the ground. I like the 2 inches
It's-
off the ground.
There's no secondary process going on.
Right. So how could it be special? Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
and life is extremely ordinary, but there's no secondary process going on.
Yeah. It's like you're
Well-
going back to your original state, your original
Right.
mind, you know?
Our teacher
it-
would always say,
simple.
drop any specialness like a hot potato.
Yeah.
Just drop it. And he would point to Tolle, and you could see Tolle wouldn't hold anything like that.
Yeah. I have a tremendous respect for Tolle. And
Yeah,
I
me
think
too.
even today I was recommending, because something came up. Oh, I know what it was. We were talking about the pain body. So I worked on a psych unit for 13 years, and I saw really a lot of people in distress. And I think Eckhart Tolle's pain body accurately describes so much of the human condition. And I really recommend anybody who's serious to read both his books. And Tolle's not selling you a religious point of view or philosophical. He's really describing better than anybody I've seen what the human being's doing and how we keep reinforcing the pain body. Like you said, marriage, that's what it's usually about, the pain bodies. One pain body triggering the other. And so I have a lot of respect for him and do recommend those books.
He is a special man, and he did something very special for me when I first started meditating 10, 12 years ago. He was the first book, not The Power of Now. What's the other one?
A New Earth?
Yes. That book, that was the first book I read, and I couldn't believe what I was reading. And it started to all make sense because of him. And then just for fun, I read it like 2 years ago and just was blown away.
Yeah, that's the thing about those books. You can read them, and I do recommend that to people. Read it again in 2 years. It'll be a totally different book, and then read it again in 2 years. And by that time, you go, well, this is so obvious.
Then it's obvious, right? I know.
People go,
it's
I've
crazy.
had people throw it out. I've had them throw it across the room. I've had them rant and rave at me. There's certain critics who hate Tolle because I think he really nails them. Certain teachers who say they're awake who really don't like Tolle.
Do you want to name some names?
Maybe they're jealous of his effectiveness.
I think they're very jealous of his. If you prop yourself up by putting others down, that's And I think they're very jealous of the teachers who teach very clearly and simply and have a much bigger following and better book sales.
Yeah.
They go after them. And that's a little suspicious right there.
And maybe it's someone who's a big spiritual guru like Deepak Chopra or Eckhart Tolle. You see them have all this money, a real lot of money, but maybe it's just to help the cause. It's not personally for them to use that money. Like Chopra has a whole wellness foundation. Like this, I think all his money, like $250 million goes into that. They're not wanting to be rich people. They're looking to make their foundation bigger so it can reach more people, right?
Right. We're a capitalistic society and energy is expressed in terms of money. And you can have no interest in money at all and end up quite wealthy because that's simply how people, they support you, they appreciation. I've had people give me money for clients who can't afford to see me. They want
That's great.
me to be able to see people, whether those people can afford to pay or not. And so they pay for it. And I'm not out there asking for that or soliciting, but these people out of their own heart, and the people who contribute to satsang, it's satsang is no payment, nobody has to pay. But some people are amazingly generous, and that's out of their own heart, and they support it. And so I can easily see how these people get very wealthy just by doing good things. But people are jealous of that wealth. They're jealous of that.
Right. Like if I gave you $1 million, now you have a retreat, is it in North Carolina?
Right now, I don't have anything, but when COVID's not going on, there's a local yoga center called the Yoga Garden, and that's where we hold satsang now in a group, and we hope to get back there. It's a cottage owned by Lexi Wolf, and it's right downtown Pittsburgh. It's an old cottage, and she's got a big yoga room, and they have it's a good place. And when I talked to Lexi, she didn't know me, and she just opened the yoga garden, and we met with her for lunch, and I was explaining that satsang may not be a money-making deal for her, but I explained why we do it. Mm-hmm. And she thought about it and said, fine.
That's great.
She offered us the space. Now we're doing it on Zoom for now. But she grokked, that this wasn't about making money. It was about sharing. And yet, some people have been very supportive to the yoga garden because of that. And she's not asking for it. I'm not. They're choosing to do that.
Wow.
And so I can see people who've, published books and been on Oprah and stuff. That's money's coming in. And besides that, people say, I can't afford to go on a tree with Eckhart Tolle. Well, you can go on YouTube and watch about 6 million hours of Eckhart Tolle for free.
What do you got to be there in person for, right?
Yeah. Or buy his books, that the offerings are freely available.
I like the books better because, they took their time to write it a specific way on purpose.
Yeah.
I like that. Yeah. It's coming really from the right place when it's.
Yeah. It's energy.
Yeah. Oh, Tom, I have another question for you. Do you mind?
Not at all.
All right. What would you tell one of your students who is awakening, and you obviously can see it? This person, that male or female, doesn't matter, is clearly ready to pop, but they have a family and obligations. What would you tell that student?
I'd say the family and obligations really don't make a difference. But what does happen when somebody pops is often the relationships, especially with jobs and other things, can dramatically change. And so if they have a family and everything, just keep focus on opening, letting go. And hopefully that can happen and still be within the family and everything else. But that's ultimately out of our hands. Yeah. So when awakening happens, some things can shift very, very rapidly.
So if this student, if they came to you and said, I'm so close, I'm on the brink of transcendence, I could tell, I feel it, and they say, but I don't want to have this family anymore, and I don't like this job at all, it's prohibiting me from awakening further, I think I should just drop the family and the job and just be on my own and get away.
Depends on the circumstance. It really depends. I'm much easier saying doing that with jobs, because a lot of people wake up and work and realize this isn't helping anybody. But with families, especially if they're children, it's a difficult situation.
Difficult.
Yeah. So waking up in itself doesn't mean you have to leave the family, doesn't mean you have to leave the children. But if it's a bad marriage, in a bad situation, it may mean that. It may mean recognizing the children will be better off if there is a divorce.
Right.
But it depends on the circumstances. I try to it's going to unfold anyway. So I try not to say too much. There have been times where I prevented people from breaking up their family because their family, their husband or wife, is not as bad as they think.
Gotcha.
I mean, at a certain point, people can look at their husband or wife and see nothing but faults, when in truth, they've actually got a pretty good thing going.
Mhm.
That's
So
very
sometimes I say, why don't you wait a little while before you get a divorce? I mean, he's employed, he doesn't drink, he doesn't drug, he's great with the kids, he's nice to you. Give it a little longer.
Right.
Even though it's going to run off to California and live with Gangaji forever, give it a little time.
A lot of times we see ourselves in them, right? Whatever's blocking us, we see it in them, and then we realize, oh, it was me. It was me.
Yeah.
Mm.
Or it's an ego thing. Is she's not always considerate and nice to me. I'm such an enlightened avatar. How could she not? How can she expect me to take the garbage out? I mean, really, I'm just way above that.
Oh,
so you hear them, you hear their internal dialogue when they start talking about the problems they have with their kids or their husband or wife, and you realize, they're a little bit got themselves up on a pedestal sometimes.
You used the word avatar. Could you tell us a little bit about, I know you like that, what that means? Like, what is it, an avatar? Can you give us the architecture of the avatar?
Well, traditionally, the way it's used traditionally is an avatar is a conscious incarnation of God within human form or another form. But in the West, the most traditional one would be Jesus. Jesus would say, my Father, I'm the Son of God, I'm an aspect of God, and people worship Jesus as God, Christian, Catholic and all that. So Jesus would be like an avatar. And then in India, there are many avatars. There's like Krishna, the Buddha for many is considered an avatar. But the truth is, the way I use it is we're all avatars. We're all avatars, and all of us are in trance, different trance to one degree or another. But we are all that light of divine consciousness in a bodied form. And we all can bring that love and that light out, let it come through us. But the deeper our trance, the more we're seeking for happiness and satisfaction in the contents of the objective world. But the more we allow ourselves to realize we're avatars. So Guruji's lineage was the Ram lineage, which is interesting because there's a book called the Yoga Vasishta. And Vasishta was a great guru. And what happened with Ram is he was born into this family and he was a prince. And he had brothers, Lakshman and another one. I haven't thought about this for a long time. So Rams thinks he's this prince. I'm a prince. I'm born into a royal family and prince. And so Vashishta has to come to him and go, well, you're not just a prince, you're an incarnation of God. And so the Yoga Vashishta is all the teachings Vashishta had to do to have Ram experience he's a divine incarnation. But the symbolism is that's what we all are. That's why we're all meditating. That's why we're all waking up, is we're all divine avatars. And all of us are hypnotized into limitation at different levels. Even Rama, even Jesus initially were hypnotized into limitation. And then they woke up out of that. And, the Jesus story is not told that well, but he basically pissed everybody off by telling the truth. He wasn't selling religion, he wasn't selling politics. He really pissed everybody off.
Right.
Yeah, I'm coming back to, I was raised Catholic, where RJ was raised a little more secular, right? I'd say, or you had some Buddhist influence, but not too
really?
much.
That's cool.
Yeah.
His dad had like Lao Tzu books and some Christian
Cool.
work. But I was, I rejected, by 12 years old or so. And then Randy was in my life. So that was the end of that. So it's so beautiful now to come back to the Christian mystics, to the Meister Eckhart and Rusbrook and Tolle and Marguerite Parit and all these great mystics. Julian
Father
Norwich.
Thomas Keating was a
Oh,
Catholic.
love him.
Okay, you know who he is, yeah.
And Thomas Merton, my mom would bring
Yep.
the books home and I'd see Merton and I'd say, what about this guy? I actually asked. And she said, oh, you'd like him. He was a monk, but the church, some of them didn't like him. And I said, oh, he sounds interesting. And then I knew he was shocked. I didn't know why. I thought it was like a telephone pole or something.
Yeah.
And then many years later, I think 2015, I bought my first book and Thomas Merton, and I'm like that. I'm this guy right here, but
yeah.
Yeah.
And Tony DeMello is another one.
I love him.
He loves it. Yep.
Yeah.
Mellow.
I went back to my priest. I went back to my priest that would run the youth group with us. And he was just the coolest priest. I mean, we were idiots. We were rock and roll and drinking. And we gave him, Freddy Krueger was a big deal back then. And we gave him a poster of Freddy Krueger. And he actually put it on the altar for Christmas Eve. He put it on the lectern, right on the altar. And he held his hand up and gave us the rock and roll. So I contacted him within the last 5 years, and we've been meeting maybe once a month and just talk on. It's been so wonderful to return to it in the right way. And he was always non-dual, but I didn't know. And he says, I can't go out there and speak non-dual. I'll lose the whole congregation.
Yeah.
But if they come to me,
they'll nail them up like Jesus.
Yeah. But if they come to me privately, then, and he's the one that turned me on to Anthony DeMello.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Catholicism's weird because it goes from the archaic, let's kill anybody who disagrees with us, to really incredibly non-dual mystics.
Yeah.
And one of my students who's devout Catholic is also one of the most enlightened, but his interpretation is very different than your downtown church. And
Right.
so he sees, meditation for him means let go and let God, but the God he's talking about isn't some guy somewhere else.
Right.
It's the divine consciousness. And he has a very different grasp of what it all means.
Which would be, I would assume, similar to Meister Eckhart and the Christian mystics that James had mentioned.
Yeah.
Richard Rohr is great. Richard Rohr, Cynthia
Yes.
Bourgeau.
He's great.
Jim Finley, amazing. You know him?
No, I've
He
heard of
was a student of Merton's. At 18 years old, his father was an alcoholic, would beat the mother, and he left and went to Merton at 18. And
Wow.
and he flipped.
Right.
Great guy.
But so that's back to our questions about gurus and teachers, is if you just get stuck in Catholicism, it seems like a very rigid, limiting system, which it certainly can be. But if you go to an authentic teacher in that system, you can wake up.
Right. Yeah.
And so what brings life to Catholicism isn't its dogma, it's the teachers within it.
Mhm.
And so without them, you've got a pretty crazy, thing going.
I had no idea the word Catholic means universal until about 5 years ago. It was anything but. It was like, it's a club that you can't get in, and now.
Dark Ages was not a good time for anybody who could think.
Yeah. I think I heard on Alan Watts' lecture, he said something, or he was quoting someone else, that after you awaken, then you can go back to your certain religion. And
he said start a new one. Yeah, or join one, right?
Yeah, or like
you
go
hear
back.
it differently. Yeah, you hear it differently.
Yeah, after you wake up, then for
Right.
fun. It's just for
Then
fun.
it can be fun. Yeah.
Don't do it for any of the, yeah, just it's fun. It's
Another one I love, Tom, is the Sufis.
Yeah.
Have you explored them? I'm sure.
Well, I lived in a commune in California for a while, and some of Sufi Sam's people used to come up there, Sufi dancing, and great place to pick up girls. And Sufis. But yeah, the true Sufis were really incredible.
Yeah. Incredible.
Yeah.
And who was that woman, English woman who was studying under Sufi, wrote a big, thick book about it. God, I can see her eyes. But anyway, yeah, the true Sufi tradition is very open.
Rumi and Hafiz, they would be like the mystics of the Islam, I'd say.
Yeah.
And Kabbalah, I don't know, have you gone into that? I haven't really, I tried.
I know some people have gone into it, and again, if you have a good teacher, it's very deep and mystical.
Right.
I have a Jewish friend whose husband just died in his 90s. He escaped Nazi Germany, but she was in love with somebody else. It was very interesting. It's one of the first only marriages I know where it was arranged. And her mother said, "You're not going to marry him." And she said, "But I'm in love with him." She goes, "Love, that burns out in about 6 months. Marry this guy. He'll take care of you for the rest of your life." So she married him, and she was ecstatic. She couldn't believe what a good marriage she had.
Wow.
And Ralph lived right up into his 90s and stuff. And it was just, she told me all the time, "My mother was right. I can't believe it. My mother was right."
Once in a while.
But she studied Kabbalah and told me, it's pretty deep, pretty mystical.
Yeah. What I was reading, it fit what we talk about all the time, that God or pure imagination has to limit itself. I can't remember the word for it, but the light limits itself in order to, so it pretends sort of to be finite in order to refract, or I don't know the right word, to project
rediscover itself.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah. It's interesting with teachers, certain gurus, if you're around them long enough, of course, they're answering people's questions on many different levels according to the person.
Right.
But if you are listening, they're always saying, all there is God. God is all there is, and you are that. Now, that's an impossible statement for many people. So then they give them things to do, and ideas, concepts, beliefs, progression, the path of progression and all this. But they're always reminding people you're already free. You're self-hypnotized, and you can release that when you're ready. But most people don't want to release that. They just want a better deal.
Right. Yeah, a little bit better spiritually, a little bit better, a little less suffering.
Yep.
But a guru should be like dispelling your illusions rather than telling you what ultimate reality is, right? In that way.
Yeah, they meet you where you are.
Yeah, like Nagarjuna.
Yeah.
He would tell his students why they're wrong in what they currently believe, and get to a point where they get uncomfortable because everything they're saying is dispelled.
Right.
And he's wrecking your world, and it's uncomfortable. And then you get to a certain point, right, that you just ruined everything I believe in. What's left over, kind of thing, right?
But see, what you're saying, all belief, if it was true, you don't have to believe it. So all beliefs, all reality tunnels, all concepts are not true.
Right.
They can be pointers, but people have different levels of sophistication for different pointers. But any concept or belief that we're holding on to, that's not it. It's like the word God. We're talking about God. I think we all have a similar understanding of what we're saying, but other people still think God's some guy down the street,
right.
With a big computer running things, and so a true guru, all concepts, all beliefs, all reality tunnels are not it.
Yeah. So like
think it, that's not it.
If you say God is real, that's a concept. If you say God is not real, that's a concept.
Right. Exactly.
They're both concepts.
Mhm.
Right.
Neither
And
one
yet
is true.
you can know in awareness exactly the truth of that they're both true, they're both false, and see, not get caught in them.
Yeah, it's tricky.
There's a
Yeah,
great
the
little
mind
line.
can't do it. The mind can't do it.
Yeah,
There's a
and
great-
you will stay with the mind for so long, you will
Right.
continue and continue until someone like tackles you and says, stop.
But
Right?
see, that's why so I practice Zen, I practice Raja Yoga and stuff. But what happened with Muktananda with the Kundalini is it's a bigger power of intelligence than the human mind.
Mhm.
So you could literally be blown out of your mind around him. And then when he pointed something out, you actually saw it. It wasn't a concept, it wasn't thought, it was a pratyabhijna, a direct knowing.
Mm.
And in Guruji, Sri Dhyan Yogi was like that too. The field around them was so powerful that it wasn't mind-based anymore. It was revelatory. It was
Yeah.
revelation. And that's also the power of a teacher, is the revelation of what they're saying. We were talking about Eckhart Tolle's books. That power of revelation is in his books.
Mm.
If it's not the words, somebody can read those same words, but that power of revelation is coming through the book. So you can read a passage and you pop. You suddenly go, oh my God, I got it.
Right.
And it's not a conceptual getting. It's an actual
Right. Like a lot of,
seeing.
yeah. A lot of the Zen tradition, it's a word or a phrase that will
Mhm.
be that final pop.
Right,
You know?
right.
Yeah. That's
Yes.
fascinating. Oh, Tom, I have a question for you. Two-part. Number one, can anyone awaken without practicing? And if so, if yes, would they be lacking something going forward?
Yes, they can know one of the things I always say is nothing has to happen first before awakening happens.
Nothing has to happen first before awakening happens.
That doesn't mean stuff won't happen first, but nothing has to happen.
Ah, that's good, Tom.
But if somebody, let's say, then chooses to be a teacher, they're missing the ruthless processes people go through. So yesterday, a guy wrote me and he said, I was explaining where he was. He's lost all devotion. He feels empty. He feels hollow. He says, have you ever been there? Yeah, a couple hundred times. In other words,
Couple hundred.
I can relate to him because I know exactly what he's talking about through my own experience. If I had just popped without any of the difficulties and hardships that people go through, I might be awake, but I might not be able to relate to somebody. I'd be saying things like, all there is devotion. I probably said that anyway, but you know, that dryness, when you've had this height of supreme devotion, then it just goes away. I think somebody who's had, let's say, obstacles in their path can appreciate where others are coming from more deeply.
Hmm.
But never put an obstacle in the way of awakening.
I like that. It's very good.
It's already happened. I mean, that's
Jim?
what pratyabhijna is. It's a direct recognition that even though we believe we're a wave, we've always been the ocean.
Belief plays a huge role. James, you wrote
Yeah.
a lot about that in your book, Belief.
Yeah, I
glue-
said it's the
Yeah.
glue that holds us. Yeah,
Yeah, it's the trance.
yeah.
It's the trance.
Got to break the spell.
Yeah. And
So
so like the Catholic Church is a good example. You either have priests who are perpetuating the beliefs, or they're priests liberating you from the beliefs.
right.
I love that. Yeah. Yeah,
Can we
like
do? Oh, sorry.
you can either say to a student, listen, you're the ocean, or you could say, you're not this wave. You're not the wave, because the wave, you can't be the wave, because the wave is this way, and it's just an event. It's motion. You're
It's an
more,
event.
you know.
That's good. Yeah, it's just an event. don't get too attached to the event.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Oh, I have a question for you, Tom. This is actually like one of my last questions. I saw a picture of you, and very impressive in full lotus position, by the way. I could do like half lotus, not the full one yet. I saw you had no shirt on.
Oh,
And my question is, you look very healthy. What is your diet and your fitness routine like?
I do hatha yoga every day for about an hour. When I do hatha yoga, I'm talking about the traditional hatha yoga, not the Hollywood hatha yoga. Hatha yoga comes out of the early tantric tradition, and it's Kundalini yoga. It's balancing the sun and moon energies, the right nostril, left nostril, for the hemispheres. So the Kundalini, instead of being yin or yang, it moves up the central channel. So hatha yoga is preparing the physical, subtle, and causal vehicle for the full impact of this incredible intelligence being released.
Mm.
So I do hatha yoga every day. And then if I can, I try to walk a couple miles in the afternoon, depending on what. If I can't walk, I do another very short practice of about 20 minutes. For eating, I eat 2 meals a day. And the first one is usually raw vegetables, nuts, like that. I'm eating sardines and salmon we eat at night, and chicken or turkey, but also lots of vegetables, lots of fruit, and peanut butter.
The 2 meals you
Peanut butter.
per day are what times of the day?
Last meal is, we end usually about 7:30 at night, and then I don't eat again until about, like today it was 12:30.
So it's
That's why James had to hold this meeting till 1:30. That's usually after I eat. So I eat usually before my first client, usually about 12:30.
Mm.
So that's whatever it is, 12, 16 hours or so.
I think they call that intermittent fasting.
Yeah, but I was doing that. I've done it my whole life before
Yeah.
I even knew what it was.
Oh, you've been doing that your whole life?
Yeah, because I get up even when I had regular jobs, I get up to do yoga and meditation before I go to work.
Mm.
When I worked in factories, I had to be at work at 7, so I'd be up at 4:00 doing meditation and yoga. I'm glad those days are over.
Wow.
But I usually didn't eat till later.
What would you, how would you get someone who's struggling to meditate? You know, they love nature and they know this is the truth, but they can't sit still. They can't, and they try and they try.
Mm.
What would you say to them?
Stop trying.
Stop trying.
I don't, there are no shoulds in my teaching. So
Right.
go out and be in the woods. But what I do say is, you're in the woods, just take a moment to notice you're noticing.
That's
To
good.
notice that whatever's going on is in your field of awareness. That without any effort at all, no effort at all, birds are heard, snow's falling, the wind's blowing. Just be aware of that awareness.
Mhm.
And what happens there is often people spontaneously go into meditation. They'll sit there and they'll suddenly look and say, my God, I've been sitting here half an hour.
Mm.
Mm.
But I don't think, when we're imposing, and believe me, I've done this, so I'm not judging it, but when we're imposing discipline on ourselves, we're subscribing to the lie that this isn't already it,
Right.
Sure.
that there's something that has to be done or shifted. If a person is to do meditation or yoga or whatever, that spiritual power will lead you to do it. You know, I've taught meditation to thousands of people. Most of them come in with the intent of they want to get enlightened and they intend to follow the discipline. And so I used to teach a 7-week course, and I've seen what happens. The dropping away, and they all have their excuses, but it's not their fault. It's just the way it is.
Mm-hmm.
So those people who are meant to meditate, you can tell because they're meditating. And those who aren't meant to meditate, you can tell because they're not meditating. And that can shift at any moment.
I like you said like if they love nature, to use nature as your, start there.
Just relax into it.
If they like to garden, maybe relax into the gardening, whatever it is, magic, drums, sleight of hand.
Just be aware that it's all appearing in awareness.
Mm-hmm.
I remember going to the bitter end with Arlo Guthrie about 1 million years ago, but the awareness of walking in there.
Yeah.
First time I was in the bitter end, Arlo, he was a lot younger and thinner back then. And just that whole, it's all arising in awareness. Everything's arising within awareness. And nature, it's a little easier because when we're around other humans, we have so many social cues going on that people are usually, like we talked about, in the game or something. But nature, dogs don't care what we're up to.
Right.
Monks don't care. Deer don't care. And animals, wild animals are not afraid of people who are waking up. It's a different forest out there when people are awake, because animals are vibrational. They can pick up whether they should be afraid of you. So a yogi can walk through the woods and see deer and bear and all sorts of stuff. And a hunter can walk through the woods and go, there's no game in these woods.
Wow.
RJ and I was sitting in an arboretum that I was going to my whole life. No one ever mentioned there were deer there, ever. There were, rabbits, maybe. I've seen squirrels, snakes. No one mentioned deer. I knew everyone there. And we're sitting in the woods one day, deep in by a lake. And I have monks playing on the Kindle really quietly. We're really practicing. And he says, look over there. And 4 deer come out in the middle of the day. And they each came up to us and looked at us, approved, and walked away. The next one came up and they did that 4 times and walked away.
They went 50 feet, 50 whatever yards away, and they came back and did the same thing.
Yeah, they did it again. Yeah.
On the way back. Each one came within like 6 or 7 feet of us.
Yeah.
See, they picked up on your vibes. You're not normal human.
They had to have, right?
Yeah. You're not a normal human. You're not, they don't pick up that craziness in you.
Like that's the same thing. That's like similar to an animal can sense fear.
Yeah.
Right.
So Bonnie and I teach this thing called heart math, which is a very good technique.
Heart math?
Yeah, heart for heart, math for it's scientifically based.
Gotcha.
You can find YouTubes on it. But anyway, a lot of our students are professional riders riding horses. And horses are game animals. They're hunted. So they're very aware of their environment. And the people who practice heart math, the reason they started doing it is the horses pick up that they're chilled. So the horses are much more relaxed, much less afraid, let them ride, have much better rides, much less danger because the horses aren't picking up. So that the vibrations out of the heart, when somebody's doing heart math, are very coherent vibrations, and the horses pick that up right away. They can tell these people are sane. And somebody who's not doing it, they can have all the riding training in their life, but if they come in and they're chaotic and hectic, the horse is like, don't let them near me. So a very different riding experience, and the riders saw that. So some of them became hard math trainers themselves, but a lot of them took the hard math training because horses pick up on the energy and respond to it. All animals do.
They do.
I won't even say what happens with my cat during no one would believe, and especially on LSD. I cannot. It was a total subject-object collapse with the cat. It was amazing.
This isn't good, but when I was a kid, by weight, I would give both my cats some mescaline, and we all together. And some of the funniest things happened. One time we came in the kitchen because my mother came back from shopping, and she's putting the stuff up, and there's a paper bag on the floor. And Taka, who is a black cat, was just sitting there All of a sudden, Taka looks straight up in the air, leaps up and lands in the bag, freaked her out completely. And my mother's going, what the hell's going on here? And the three of us were out of there. But I don't advise giving psychedelics to animals, but I was a teenager then.
Yeah.
And
I think
did it
they're
by
close.
very careful.
They don't really need it.
No, they don't need it.
No veil.
James, you know that
They'd freak me
video?
out. They'd freak me out.
You know that video of the jaguar that's staring on its back, looking up in the stars, and it just ate? What did it? I don't know if it ate mushrooms.
I don't think so.
Oh, you don't know that?
No.
Oh, okay.
It ate mushrooms.
Yeah, and it's
Jeez.
they have yeah, I think mushrooms. It ate something psychedelic, and it was sitting. It was just laying on its back. Oh, you don't know it? Okay, I thought you knew that.
No.
So is that
look
on
at it.
YouTube?
Yeah,
I have to
That'd
look
be
at that.
great.
it's a cougar.
Amazon jaguar eating mushrooms.
Yeah,
I always think about how a dream works, and if in a dream the tiger is coming up to you and you lucidly awake in the dream, there'll be a total peace there. You can pet the tiger because you know what it is.
right.
You know it's all made of you.
Yeah. Well, that's true anyway.
Yeah. It's always good.
Dream yoga is really good because of exactly that reason. You start finding out how it's all working. It's all everything in the dream is you in a different form.
Yes. Did you say dream yoga?
Yeah.
Oh, I never heard of that.
So we had a course called the Hara, H-A-R-A training. Hara meaning like in Zen, the lower dantian. And in a Hara training, one of the things we did was dream yoga. So everybody go out and buy a little crystal. And then you hold it in your hand using your mantra. Mantra is spiritual power and a sound structure. And you keep it for about a week. Every time you meditate, you're putting your Shakti, your energy in the crystal. And then on a very dark night, we'd walk way out in the woods, and there's a big tree in the sandhills. It's the oldest longleaf pine in the area, hundreds of years old. And if you want crystals, there are hundreds of them buried around it now. So everybody would take their crystal and bury it by the big tree. Everybody hugged the tree. There are people who didn't believe trees were aware and intelligent. They admitted after hugging that tree. That tree came back to life when we started going up and hugging it. And people felt it, like it knew we were there and welcomed us. So anyway, we bury our crystals. And then at night, because your crystal has your vibration in it, you go to sleep focusing on your crystal, asking it to call you in your dreams. And then in the dream, you're doing your dream thing, and then suddenly you go, oh, I've got to go visit my crystal. And then you go to the crystal, and you can find it because it's got your energy. And then whoever successfully went to the tree to see their crystal, they're not supposed to tell anybody but me. So they can't get false reports. And so somebody would come up and say, I went to the big tree last night and RJ was there. And then somebody else would come up and go, I went to the tree last night and he was there. And then I know that they actually both went and met at the tree in their dream yoga.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so the crystal, having an object, you can hide it in your office, you can take the crystal and put it anywhere you want. You have to clean it in a stream, because crystals are like, they hold energy, so you need to clean the energy and then put your own in it. You can put it anywhere and just ask it to call you at night.
Is there a connection between the, you were saying the vibrational mantra, which is a vibration or sound?
It's a vibration, yeah.
Now, is the crystal involved with that vibration as well? Is there a connection?
Yeah, you're planting that vibration in the crystal.
Oh, wow.
So
Okay.
so it's picking up your resonance.
It's like
So,
recording. It's like kind of getting recorded in the crystal too.
yeah, it's you're implanting that energy into it.
Wow.
And so because it's your energy and your mantra, then you can tune into it. And so distance on this plane, there's no distance in dreams.
Yeah.
You can be sitting in bed one moment at the crystal the next moment.
I mean, that makes sense because memory is not in the physical brain, it's in the consciousness.
Right.
That would make sense. Huh?
Everything, yeah. So dream yoga helps us get out of time, space, and the way we normally perceive it. And
Anything
you can also meet gurus in dreams.
Is that tied to lucid dreaming at all? I was asking.
Yeah, it's a form. I think a modern term for it would be lucid dreaming. It's to help you be awake in your dreams. Yeah.
James, you could do that. You're a lucid dreamer, right?
I remember as skeptics, we read Richard Feynman. He was good friends with Randy. Have you read him? And he would.
I haven't read that much Feynman. Yeah, I know.
In his college days, he would run home to the dorm in order to lucid dream. He'd shut the lights and pull the shades down and try to wake up in the dream and go to his light switch and put it on and try different techniques. And I thought it was crazy back then. And
did he ever wake up in his dreams?
Yeah, he wrote many essays about it.
Yeah, I think for scientists with rigid views, that type of thing is good to wake up, to have a really good lucid dreaming experience.
Yes.
Something to chew on for a while.
That's why in the book,
James, how did you wake up out of all that? You were a trained skeptic. You've told some of it in your books, but
well, Paul,
quite a shift for you.
Our teacher, he was. So the amazing Randy was like my hero as a child.
Sure.
And then Paul Harris was my hero of sleight of hand. He was the greatest with cards. And he seemed to be philosophical. And when I finally got to meet him, he said, well, actually it was on the phone first. He said, when I first met him, he said, Randy's not skeptical enough.
Yeah, good.
And I thought that was crazy. I told RJ, that's crazy. How is he not skeptical enough? And he said, because he believes in matter, that matter is really solid.
Exactly. Very good.
And that blew my mind. I couldn't understand. This was like 1993. And then many years later, as luck would have it, he puts out a box set, and in the box set, if you're the first 300 to buy the set, you get in a forum with Paul Harris online.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, and I was in that, and the guy who was running it, I wrote him and told him I met Paul way back when, and I know. Right? What's that?
In New Jersey, you met him.
Oh no, Randy was New Jersey.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, this was in New York, and
okay.
I said that I know he's right. And after the 3-hour talk, and even in the talk, the guy was they had technical difficulties. They couldn't get Paul on the camera. So he's holding a phone up with Paul on the phone. And once in a while, he's flashing the number. And I'm sitting there with a pen going through, trying to get the number. She can't get in touch with this guy. And I only had a few numbers, so there was no way. So the chat ended after about 3 or 4 hours. I put my little beagle outside and I came in and looked at the phone, and on the phone, it was a missed call. And I dialed the number, and it was Paul Harris, and he called every day.
Wow.
Every day, hammering, and I would relay everything with RJ to RJ. Every day, hammering on no matter. And life is like a dream. And he waited about a month to hit me with that this is all consciousness. Yeah. But at first he was saying you have to go within. Everything you're doing is without. You have to go within. And so only after a few meditations of neti neti, there was a complete, I thought I was dying. And, and it was a complete pull right into, I just let go. And at the same time, it was like an infinite love beyond words. And I understood every Buddhist book I read. I understood everything. And I wrote it down somehow on the phone, sent it to RJ. And he said, that sounds like Jack Kerouac, I think you said, right? Yeah. And Kerouac was The Golden Eternity. I knew it was right.
Yeah.
Golden Eternity.
RJ would read it. And I knew it was right, but we both couldn't understand it. It was too too out there. And now I was writing just like it. And that was it. And then years later, that made us go single pointed. And we just started, everything started falling away, and we were practicing. And then we took some of the medicine. About 4 years later, Paul Harris flew out to New York, and RJ the first night and me the next night. And it totally confirmed what I felt back in 2009.
Well, that's amazing. That's great.
Yeah.
You said you felt like you're dying. The ego is a survival mechanism. And when it thinks you're going to wake up, it's like you're going to die if you do this.
Such fear. Yeah, it was all fear.
Yep.
That's why I laugh. You know, people go, I'm in such fear, anxiety, depression, everything. I'm laughing. They don't, it's like, it's working. It's
yeah.
You're at the end of the rope.
I remember once.
He's still alive, Paul Harris?
Yes, very much. And he's going to be listening to this. So he would definitely, if he had a question for you, it would be, how would you convince someone of no matter? How are we going to convince these scientists that there's no matter?
What's kind of sad about that question is Einstein did it over 100 years ago. I mean, you know, what these people they ought to read a little science. They ought to read some quantum physics. I mean, the greatest quantum physicists have been talking about this, there's the appearance of matter, there's the solidity of energy sort of in our brain, the way our brain works, making it solid. But really, in meditation, it can just, you can see it for what it is.
Yep.
And it's just energy vibrating. And it's amazing that, I mean, most people are stuck in scientific paradigms of like 20, 30 years ago.
Yeah.
It's really interesting because they think that, you know, they're up to date on science. But computers, you know, the whole computer technology is based on there's no matter. I mean, you're in Upper New York State.
Yeah, we're on Long Island.
Long Island. And here I am in North Carolina. We're talking to each other in the present moment because the quantum physics works. I mean, it's just, I don't know how it works, but this is amazing.
Yes.
Where's the matter? You know, there's nothing around my iPad. There's no connection. And so where's the matter connecting us? You know, there's nothing but space. There's nothing but air. And yet here we are showing up. All three of us are literally at least in two places at once. I mean, we're here talking to each other, and yet we're separate. And all of that, what's the word? Astonishment.
Yes.
And yet a scientist who's a materialist can talk to themselves and hypnotize themselves into that knot of limited conceptual belief and really believe they're taking a scientific point of view when it's ridiculous.
That word particle throws it off. Like vibration is so much better than particle. You think of a little rock, a little a BB or something.
But a particle, particles.
We manifest particles with our mind.
Right.
Yeah, we put them together. But
Yeah.
it's what's the particle's a wave? I mean,
Yeah.
A wave looked at a certain way seems to be a particle, but when you really investigate the particle, it's not there.
It's
Like
a wave.
the wave is half the story, because once we measure it, then you have physicality.
Right.
Before
So
you
what I
measure
ask my students is, before you decide to be a particle or a wave, what are you?
Right.
right. That's good. Right. Yeah, I started
It's
meditating.
back to Nagarjuna, but
I love Nagarjuna. When I first read his Emptiness of Emptiness, I was just totally blown away. Totally. I'm like, getting the emptiness. Okay. Yeah. But wait, emptiness of emptiness. Oh, that was it for me. That guy.
right.
Right. But what, like you were saying before, like the world, when I first found out that the world is akin to a dream, and like a dream, physical reality is mental.
Right.
It's a mental event, and individuality is not actual.
Right.
But from the reason why these scientists, even though they know science and their own science heroes are telling them, the quantum physicists like Schrodinger and
Planck and Heisenberg, yeah.
But
Yeah,
even though they hear the words, still from our human point of view, we are clearly separate from the world, from the human point of view.
Even though we're breathing 16 times a minute.
There's so many things going on we're not aware of. But what they focus on is like, we're separate from the world because obviously we can't stop the world from turning. I can't move objects with my mind. I can't read your mind. James, I can't read. I don't know what you're thinking right now.
Sure you do.
There's an obvious barrier between me and you and me and objects. So that's just the perception. And that will screw someone up for life. Just sticking with that perception. But it's the barrier is an illusion.
Right.
The barrier between us and the world is an illusion. So without knowing
they were literally taught into. We're literally taught into it by our culture and our society.
Yeah, the second you're born, your name is Tom.
Right.
Only answer if I say Tom. And that's a bird, and that's your mommy, and that's your daddy, and so it starts right from there.
Right.
But the barrier will be, if you don't know it's an illusion, will become your prison.
Right.
That barrier. So, but I will say it's true. I cannot change the world. I can't read anyone's thoughts. I can't move objects with my mind. There is an objective world outside of me, meaning when I die, the dream will continue, right? So there is an objective world, but that doesn't mean that my mind is separate from the world. So science.
How do you know the world continues after you die?
I'm assuming.
Uh-huh.
If you died right now, I think the dream would still continue.
That's what you say.
I'm a figment in
universal dream. The universal dream.
I'm not saying it wouldn't. I'm just saying we the only thing we know for sure is what has appeared within our awareness. Awareness is the first fact. Everything else, every other fact, scientific or otherwise, is an appearance within awareness.
It's an appearance, right?
Now, even us, the Tom, the autobiographical Tom, is an appearance in that awareness.
Correct.
I mean, I'm not always thinking about Tom. Like, there are other things that could show up, but that awareness is the first fact, always.
And then all we can know is that appearance. The mind can't know beyond it.
Never born and never die. It never dies. It was never born. So
that first fact, right?
Yeah.
And everything is an objective appearance within it.
Yeah.
Even our assumptions. See, we have to be careful of our assumptions because there's so much a given. Even scientific assumptions, there's so much.
Yeah, but I'm saying
we never look at it.
No, I'm with you totally. But like the appearance is like the objective world is universal consciousness. The manifestation, which is myself, when that let's call it like I'm a segment of consciousness, but not a separate segment. So when I die, there is no death because I was never born. I was universal consciousness the whole time. So in that way, the only thing like an objective world would be not the avatar, like the fake avatar, right? So like who I truly am is not the avatar. So if the avatar dies, the dream continues is is that okay to say that?
It's okay. It's okay with me for you to say it.
I'll take back the assumption word I used before. But for something to be, I think the problem with the materialists is something being independent. Because if something's independent, it must be infinite and eternal, right? So there's nothing infinite and eternal in the universe, right? So
I have trouble believing there's still scientists who are materialists.
Well, there are. Yeah.
I-
Jerry Coyne.
Jerry Coleman.
We were
I mean,
just talking about-
acting.
sit
we
and
just talk- we
simply
were just talking about that.
observe for 3 minutes, you should be able to penetrate through that.
But let me ask
Yeah.
you guys a question, Tom and James. You were in a secret email. I won't give up the names, but weren't they? I could be mistaken. Weren't they scientific-minded people, the materialists, right?
Mhm.
And they were, and I don't think they understand what materialism is exactly.
Well,
Otherwise,
one of the big questions was, all right, you think that you've experienced this all-pervading intelligence, you've experienced this bliss beyond space and time, but how do you know that wasn't just between your ears? I would, and how can you say that's what everyone is experiencing? That's their question. How are we making this almost arrogant claim, even though it's the opposite of that? How are we saying that what happened, like to me, where I thought I was dying and the ego dissolved and experienced this bliss and love and eternity, immortal imagination beyond space and time? How dare I say that is what is the truth? How can I say that's the truth? That was the big, right, Tom? I would say that was one of their big.
I think
It's just subjective, they're saying.
I didn't get into it, but here's a simple answer: is this is a scientific process. If you're willing to honestly do the experiment, and I think nete is a good experiment. If you are willing to honestly perceive your experience and very carefully go into certain things like nete, you will know beyond a shadow of a doubt for yourself.
right.
It's scientists are so objectively oriented, but what is the source of the objective universe is subjective.
Right.
And you have to have the courage and willingness and honesty more than anything to really do these experiments. And if you do them authentically, you'll flip-flop.
It will actually dissolve the skepticism beyond a shadow of a doubt, and it'll be more real than anything you've ever experienced.
Exactly. And exactly. And you say that very well in your books, but it isn't belief, and it can be done very methodically and scientifically. And that's what initially turned me to this. And again, it's useful to have a good teacher, what's meant by nete, but just that simple exploration of seeing everything's appearing and disappearing within awareness, including the person is an object in consciousness. The person, the biological entity, the material, where everything is appearing and disappearing. Everything is in flux. And if we authentically just go back, suddenly there'll be that flip-flop.
Mm-hmm. It's amazing that I could just sit in this all day, that this heavenly state, to use those words, is here right now all the time. And also a hellish state of mind can be here right now. And it's all right. I can't put it in words, but it's all right here, not somewhere to go later after you die, but
Right.
die to the thought that you are not that right now. And it's, too beautiful.
But your
What's
question,
available?
how do you turn them? Like, what words do you say to a scientifically orientated person who's not even, with the discoveries of quantum physics, they're still saying, well, we don't know the whole story yet, but we do. It's confirmed. Right. There's no such thing as anything independent. But yet they don't want to go there.
So we try to get them to take the medicine or go sit in a...
Tom, would you say the medicine? Tom, would you agree with James that like the medicine is probably what might do something?
Well, here, let me answer it in several stages. Number one is I don't care. Number two is whoever shows up at satsang on Sundays, that's who I'm talking to. And if they don't, I'm not talking to them. I don't care.
I like it.
So the people who show up, they're the ones I don't know why they show up. I don't know how they show up, but they show up, and I love them all, and they're the ones I talk to. I don't care what anybody else thinks or believes. As far as medicine, there's a story I've told many times, but I had a psychology professor in college who was a classically trained, like Skinnerian psychology professor. And one of the things, he was fine because he'd let me talk to his classes. He said dogs are not intelligent, they're not aware. And my answer is, have you ever had a fucking dog? Pardon my language. It's like a cat. It's like, how can you say that? I mean, I just, things like that. Dogs are not intelligent and aware. But anyway, he was willing to have discourse. So I got him to take a fairly substantial dose of LSD one day.
Wow.
Basically, the end result was, how can I ever teach psychology again?
That's it.
And he said it's all based on a false premise.
Yes.
And one time he was in that class, he had a mandala on his refrigerator. Poor guy went a little, he smoked a bunch of hashish. He was just sitting there staring at the This is a guy with a PhD and everything.
Right.
But he, on LSD, I mean, he just shifted everything. He saw it. He saw all of that is based on assumed premises.
Right.
I didn't know you knew Richard Alpert.
He saw his own biases and assumptions.
Yeah, they're deeply conditioned, what I call reality tunnels. The traditional Skinnerian psych teaching is based on a bunch of reality tunnels that are only there if you hold them to be there.
That's right.
And so on LSD, he saw that, and it didn't make life easier for him because that was his profession.
Right.
Just out of curiosity, was it difficult to convince him
to take LSD?
Yeah.
He was a heavy drinker, and I think, like my brother and a number of other people, they just thought it'd be another form of being high to them meant something very different than it did to us. So they thought, I can drink a bottle of Jim Beam, I can handle this. They didn't know what psychedelic meant. They didn't know what mind altered meant.
Right.
They thought, they drank so they could handle it. And it really shifted things for a lot of people. I saw it shift things because it was nothing.
When they have a science-oriented mind, you can say, in physics, we smash we use particle accelerators. Now you're going to disturb your consciousness a little bit or let it settle. And you can talk them into it that way.
Yeah, they don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
They think they do.
Right.
They think, I can handle it.
Okay, yeah.
Great. Here you go.
When I first started getting into learning Buddhism, I thought emptiness at first was like the hole in a donut.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you could speak to an intellectual and throw out words, and they'll just, put what they think you mean into their terms.
Yeah, they pull in the associations, like you're saying with emptiness. What does empty mean? Well, there's a bottle. It's empty. That's what I mean.
Yeah.
Good luck with that.
Yeah.
I like the bottle.
So LSD can pull you into emptiness.
Yeah.
Totally.
I like the bottle as an analogy that you're the space inside the bottle. And if LSD is like smashing the glass, and where does that space go? It just becomes the space in the room. It's the same.
It doesn't go anywhere, but it's
doesn't
liberated.
go anywhere. Yeah.
Yeah.
There it is.
That's a good analogy. It's liberated.
Yes.
Yeah. That guy Swami S. I don't know his name. He was on Rick Buddha at the gas pump. Swami S, and it's got a long name. He's great. He's the head of
Parva Priyananda.
Yeah.
He's the head of the Vedanta Society.
Yeah. He's very good.
Yeah, he was saying a technique he uses is like he says to his students, imagine a cup. Now imagine the form of the air inside the cup. And now take the cup away. And keep holding that image of the air that was, he said that's a good.
Yeah.
It reminds me of a bottle, breaking the bottle.
Yeah. Are you guys familiar with Kashmir Shaivism?
I've heard you mention it, but I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not familiar.
But Kashmir Shaivism, it's sort of like, it's life positive. It's doesn't, so a lot of Buddhism and Vedanta sees this as Maya, an illusion. But Kashmir Shaivism says Maya Shakti is the play of consciousness. So they say it's possible to be fully awake and still have a great life on this level, in this plane. You can be fully awake and still be a research scientist or a magician or a musician or whatever it is. So they don't see this realm, this embodiment as something to escape from. They see it as consciousness, as consciousness playing. And so similar to Taoism, true Kashmir Shaivism is very life positive. Right. It also says everything is God. So if you need to use plant medicines to wake up, that's fine.
Right.
It doesn't have this monastic purity, no wives, no fun, no nothing. I think at some point Abhimanyu said wine is Shiva in liquid form.
Wow.
I like that.
I love it.
So it's non-dual Shaiva Tantra, is its true name, is saying since everything's already God, you can use God to reveal God. Whether you're a scientist or taking LSD or meditating or watching the deer, whatever it is, it doesn't really matter because all you're going to discover is what's always already here anyway. So Muktananda introduced a lot of us to Kashmir Shaivism, and then they got SUNY Press, State University in New York Press, to publish a lot of the books. And now Christopher Wallace's books, I think, are probably the best. There are a number of others, but for me, it's a life positive, all-inclusive teaching. It doesn't say anything's wrong with anything. It says those people over there in that political party following that religion, even though you don't like them and you disagree with them, they're it too. They're just, that's the play of consciousness. You need that dynamic tension.
Right.
And so that's pretty much where I come from. And
I love
scientists who are skeptical, that's the role. That's like, you don't want Hamlet trying to be somebody else in the middle of the play.
Right.
And then some of those skeptics, as you well know, wake up.
Yeah.
Inspire themselves.
I like that a lot. I have definitely felt that Taoist effortlessness flowing with nature, where I was kind of not thinking but doing.
Yeah, spontaneous doing. Yeah.
My question to you, Tom, would be because James and I speak about this all the time. Before we got to a level which we're not anywhere close to, where we want to be, but we always spoke about going to the cave or going to the desert for a couple of years and then coming back, then the Taoist kind of effortlessness. But before going away alone in solitude for a couple of years, did we need to do that? Did we waste our time doing that?
Going into solitude?
Yeah. Did we waste our time doing that?
No,
I loved it. I loved every second.
But was it important in waking up? That's the question.
I think there are different levels of answer, but I think in the most pragmatic way, I think it's useful to step out of the whole structure of game and be still. And, whether it's a month, a year, years, or whatever, what's difficult is coming back into the game. I think if people have professions they love, that their creative power is going through, it's not that big of a problem, but it's really hard to get back into the game.
It's almost like that first question we had today about Tony Parsons. It's similar to that, where, is there practice involved? Is there solitude involved? Is there silence involved? Is there concentration and focus involved? Or just go to a bar and wake up?
Well, yeah, again, it's what really works. And the trouble is, in a bar, drinking beer, watching the football game on TV, you're just reinforcing programming.
Totally.
If you went to the bar with the right person,
Right.
it might be different.
Yeah.
With Tony Parsons.
Yeah. So again, the path of Tantras, they call it the razor's edge, because you've got to be very skillful, because it's too easy to fall one way or the other. But I think we are so profoundly hypnotized by the expectations and games of being human that to be able to step out of that for a while, long enough for that to stop reinforcing it, can be very helpful.
It's so strong, and there's so many things that we're identified with, and
Yes.
And it's more than we even think.
Right. Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We're so brainwashed.
Well, we're conditioned, like, we think we can get out of it, but it's so deep. It's everything about you, you know, and you got to untangle it all. It's a.
But if you sit, well, you see, you don't really have to untangle it, because you're not it. That's the nete. All the karma, all the webbing and stuff is there. And if we try to untangle it, we're still identified with it. But if you just simply see it and let it be, then you can stand free.
Anthony DeMello has that great little story of
It's good, Tom.
the farmer who finds the eagle egg, and so he puts the eagle egg under the hen with the chicken eggs, and the little eaglet is born. It hatches with the chickens, and so it thinks it's a chicken, and it scratches on the ground, and it hops, like, you know, and it doesn't really fly. And one day, so it grows up thinking it's a chicken, and one day a shadow goes overhead, and it looks up in astonishment, seeing this beautiful bird. And he says, "What is that?" And the chicken says, "That's an eagle. That's the king of the sky. We're just lowly chickens, but that is the king of the sky." And so the little eagle looks up and dreams and wishes it was an eagle. Meanwhile, it thinks it's a chicken, and that's how it lives and dies a chicken, even though it's been an eagle all along.
But see, that's all of us.
Yeah, that's it.
We're all avatars.
Yeah.
But we think we have to go to Costco and be a clerk.
Belief is pretty big deal.
Yeah.
The belief of anything.
What is?
Belief.
Yeah. We're you know, that's what I love. You know, the truth about hypnotherapy is it's dehypnotizing.
That I like.
I think I said this at Satsang today. I don't know if I said it to you guys, but when you go to hypnosis training, what you find there are ministers, lawyers, salespeople.
Really?
They're all learning how to use waking hypnosis to control and manipulate people, politicians. And the way humans are, because of our conditioning, we're all so easily hypnotized. And waking up is really a process of, like I said, you of course you can open your hand, but you don't believe you can. So you're trying harder, and the trying harder makes it harder to open your hands. But when you relax, you're free. And so we're hypnotized at so many different levels, and everything's reinforcing it.
That's got to be the reason why voodoo works. For that reason right there, what you just said.
Yeah.
Right? You can only have a curse on you if you believe it, right?
Yeah, I had a Haitian woman as a patient once who, fortunately, she was possessed, and so they thought she was psychotic. But she was a lovely young Haitian woman who married a white guy from Connecticut. And so she went from this sort of tribal Haitian thing to rich Connecticut, and flipped her out. So she would go into trance and be channeling. And so the only reference system they had up there is she was psychotic. But she was just it was a form of disassociation, but that's all she knew how to do.
Wow.
And, you know, she and her husband came back and thanked me long after she was discharged, because there was nothing wrong with her. Wow. She was that was a different program than the one we were used to.
That's amazing.
The voodoo, the being possessed by a saint or something. And so she would be talking in tongues and doing all this weird stuff. But that was her programming.
Tom, do you think people are in mental institutions right now that are, some of them may be like awake, but they're classified as schizophrenic or something?
Yeah, we have to be very careful with that because I take mental illness seriously, and I do think hopefully they get the right treatment. But there have been some very awake people I have met, and many of them are way too sensitive for this world. The only thing wrong with them is I told one, and she's living with that guru. I mentioned the guru earlier. She's living with that guru now. That I said, the only thing wrong with you is you're way too freaking sane for this world. And it's true. I mean, this is a woman who is very intelligent, very sensitive, very good person, trying to make it in the world of the 80s. And it's like she had graduated from this plane and somehow got thrown back. You know, it's like she was way too good for it. But yeah, there were a number of people like that who their only problem was they were too sane, too awake.
And it's funny that they call those people like they're out of their mind.
Yeah.
That's what you want, and that's what you want, right?
Yeah.
They lost their mind. Yeah.
You want to lose your mind.
They can't get invested in the games, you know, like, well, you could join this and make $400,000 a year. And they're like, nothing about that interests me, you know. Well, what's wrong with you?
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Well,
Sorry. That was a real education working on the psyche, and it was very, very good.
That was, you know, Arthur Schopenhauer, the philosopher, would go visit mental institutions and learn what was happening in there. Yeah, he was pretty amazed as well. Yeah.
I'd often take certain patients only to be my gurus and stuff.
You took them out with you home?
Well, they could go on passes.
Okay.
So if they were interested, we had a meditation group, little group, people would go in an office and meditate in the evenings. And we had the chief psychiatrist. I said I wanted to teach meditation to certain patients. And he was I had nothing but respect for him, but he sat down with me and really went through what I'd be doing.
Yeah.
And I said, I'd only do it if the two, you know, each patient had two people, a coordinator and a mental health worker, only if they gave the okay. But he okayed it. And after he okayed it, any other psychiatrist who came in automatically okayed it because they had so much respect for him. And so over time, a lot of patients learn to meditate.
Did you see any difference between them learning to meditate and people who are not in a mental hospital meditating? Was it easier? Was it harder? Was there no difference?
Well, with some, I had to help them learn the difference between their mental illness and legitimate psychic phenomena. And some I had to say, you're having a legitimate experience. Don't tell your social worker. They don't have the reference for what you experience. But yeah, I think anybody who meditates regularly is going to start having experiences out of the box, and needs support for that, so they don't feel it. So on the psych unit, things would happen.
Right.
This one psychiatrist I taught to meditate, who was a pretty standard Yale-trained psychiatrist, had an out-of-body experience. And I said to him, well, you have a choice to make. You either commit yourself to the hospital or you open your mind. Because according to you, out-of-body experiences are a dissociative disorder.
Right.
Now that you've had one, what are you going to do now?
That's
I like that. So we maybe should wrap this up. It's been great talking to you, Tom.
Well, it's been great meeting both of you, and we've communicated, but it's great meeting you.
Tom, thank you. Great to meet you, Tom, and thank you for coming on here. We're honored to have you.
Well, I'm honored to be here, and it's great being with both of you. I've really enjoyed being with you.
We'll definitely do it again.
I look forward to another time, Tom, because I have a lot more questions and I have a ton I could learn from you. So I would love to meet you again.
Well, I'm up for it. Just let me know. I feel like, I'm having fun talking with you guys, you two. So it's great for me.
Yeah, for today, everyone's interested in Tom Brady. We want Tom Thompson.
Tom Thompson.
Tom
I
Thompson.
probably shouldn't ask who Tom Brady is, should I?
Who cares? Who cares? Great talking, Tom. We'll see you tomorrow.
Thank you,
We'll see
Tom.
you soon.
This has been great. Thank you, guys.
Bye.